We do not have the copies the inspired men penned. All that we have are copies of copies painstakingly transmitted by scribes. Scribes were learned men whose business was to study the law and transcribe it. So for most of them, the law lived rent-free in their head. Scribes were scattered across cultures and tribes. So we have three periods of the Jewish scribal tradition. We have the period of the Sophrim, we have the Talmudic period, and we have the period of the Masoretes. Eventually, during the course of time, these scribes lost their prominence and status due to the advent of the printing press in the 15th century. So the point is, how were they able to preserve the writings of the inspired men? The Genesis we read today, is it the same as of old? Okay, so let's get into today's business. We have a whole lot to discuss, so try as much as possible not to scroll. We're going to delve into the history of the scribes, the copying process, the instrument of copying, and every single thing you need to know about the transmission of the Old Testament documents. Okay, so their primary goal was to preserve the purity of the text because they knew that it was inspired by God and inspired men penned these words. At different periods, they employed strict process, or let me say strict method in the process of transmission, because the idea was to produce top quality manuscripts. They had a deep reverence for the scriptures and ensured to make the most accurate copies possible. So simply put, I would say they understood the assignment. So let's delve into the copying process. Before copying the text, a suitable exemplar would have been presented, that is the manuscript from which the copy was being made. Then papyrus or any medium of writing or other writing instruments will be assembled. After that, the writing materials will be ruled vertically and horizontally to designate rows and columns. Then the scribes will begin to copy. Professor R.K. Harrison said the Masoretes concerned themselves with the transmission of the consonantal text as they had received it. Hebrew had no vowels, so the Masoretes tried as much as possible to concern themselves with the consonantal text exactly as they had received it. They went as far as counting words, letters, and verses to establish the middle of the book. A research carried out by a Bible scholar stated that the scribes must say each word out loud while they were writing. The manuscripts must be reviewed within 30 days before additional copies were made. Interestingly, if as many as 3 pages required correction, the entire manuscript had to be redone. The entire words, letters, and paragraphs had to be counted, and the document becomes invalid if 2 words touch each other. The middle paragraph words and letter must correspond to those of the original documents. By adopting these stringent means, of course, it would have been easily detected if any word had been added or even omitted. Jesus Christ and his disciples lived some 1,400 years after Moses and 400 years after the last Old Testament book was written. The thing is, they rebuked the Jews of their days regarding any error they committed. So surely they would have revealed if there was any error in the Jewish scriptures. Was it ever mentioned that a part of the Old Testament were missing or that uninspired part had been added? Were there disputes on the authenticity of the scriptures, of the Old Testament scriptures as a whole during the time of Jesus and his disciples? Jesus quoted the law, he quoted the prophets, he quoted the Psalms and claimed to fulfill them. And even rebuked people for not knowing what was written in the scriptures. Honestly, we could go on and on to try to prove this, but the efforts put in place by these ancient writers to preserve these documents ought to inspire us to read. Ought to inspire us to read the scriptures. Is it the cost of producing a book in the ancient time or getting a scribe to pen down this sacred text? All these ought to inspire us as Christians to study, to show ourselves approved unto God, a workman that needed not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth.